was being questioned about bringing Aja Wilson and Caitlin Clark to Unrivaled, and what she said, imagine if Kate Mara is able to convince Caitlin and Aja. She goes, "We can go to the beach on off days." Was her pitch to Caitlin and Aja Wilson to join Unrivaled. And then later on, she was asked about it. She goes, "They're both two of the best players in the world, and you can't really deny that." I mean, good answer.
The sand and the shoreline. That was the selling point Kate Martin used when trying to convince two of the top basketball players on the planet to sign on with Unrivaled. Not financial incentives, not elite competition, not long-term growth, just the beach. And when you really sit with what that says, it perfectly exposes the reality of this entire situation, because that response reveals how players truly see this league compared to how it's being packaged for fans. Kate Martin has been everywhere this offseason. She competed alongside Alyssa Thomas and Jackie Young in Unrivaled last year. She shares a history with Caitlin Clark from their Iowa days, and now she's positioned in between these worlds, trying to connect them. But that beach remark wasn't casual or accidental. It was a comment from someone who fully understands what Unrivaled really represents and, just as importantly, what it does not.
It was a, they announced that it was, they were adding 6 more players. We were like, oh yeah, it's going to be Caitlin Clark. It's going to be Caitlin Clark. And yeah, it is an interesting one to see. But at the end of the day, it's a, I do have a feeling that, that we could potentially see, I don't think we could see Caitlin Clark playing Unrivaled, but you just never know. All of this becomes up in the air.
Here's the truth no one wants to admit openly. When Unrivaled revealed its first wave of players last season, the list stretched to names like spots 28, 29, 30, then Kate Martin, Lexi Hull, Aaliyah Boston, and right after Aaliyah's name dropped, the league abruptly announced 6 additional roster openings. In that moment, everyone paying attention understood exactly what was happening. This wasn't about perfecting a competitive 3-on-3 product. It was about clearing room for Caitlin Clark. The timing was obvious. The motive wasn't disguised. And when those extra spots failed to result in Clark joining, it laid bare a core truth about Unrivaled strategy. They aren't structuring the league around the strongest 3-on-3 specialists. They're structuring it around whoever might pull ratings, even if that player has zero interest in playing 3-on-3 basketball at all.
Be Unrivaled. I think the reality is that I think Project B might actually flip. I think it might actually flip and just try to take over from the WNBA if there's no WNBA season. Like, they have the money to do it. Like, whatever about the Saudi thing for the events, they might just say, you know what, it's actually not the best thing to do. Just keep it all in America. Let's basically run it as an American league at the same time as the WNBA was supposed to be ran. But at the end of the day, it's a I don't think we ever see Caitlin Clark playing Unrivaled. I think that 3v3 gimmick ball, you just don't see it. I just don't think you're going to see Caitlin Clark.
I still don't believe Unrivaled is the endgame here. The more realistic outcome is that Project B pivots entirely and attempts to step into the vacuum if the WNBA season doesn't happen. They have the financial backing to do it, and regardless of the Saudi-backed event talk, they could easily decide to keep everything domestic and operate as a US-based league running parallel to when the WNBA was supposed to play. But one thing feels almost certain: Caitlin Clark is not ending up in Unrivaled. The 3-on-3 format just doesn't align with her game, and there's no real scenario where she suddenly embraces it. Even if negotiations between the league and the players' union collapse and we're staring at a lockout or strike, that doesn't change the equation. Some people assume Clark would play anywhere if the WNBA shuts down, but that ignores a key fact. She already declined Olympic 3-on-3 basketball, not because of timing or fatigue, but because she simply doesn't believe in that style of play. And no matter how polished Unrivaled looks or how much money is behind it, it's still built around 3-on-3 basketball. Call it innovative if you want, but to Clark, it's still gimmick ball, and that's why she's staying away.
But I also think she would be garbage in Unrivaled. Like, I'm going to be honest here. I think she would be terrible. But I do think that At the end of the day, it would improve her because, let's be real, in a 5v5 setting with 5 players around, Caitlin Clark's IQ and feel for the game and pace and everything is massive. I think she's the best point guard. But in 3-on-3, what she does really well in a 5v5 setting doesn't necessarily translate to 3-on-3. And I think she would probably pull a Sabrina, as in she would be running down and chucking and having some 30-point games, having some poor games.
Consider how the 3-on-3 format actually impacts a player like Caitlin Clark. In traditional 5-on-5 basketball, her intelligence on the floor is her biggest advantage. Her sense of spacing, her ability to bend defenses with anticipation and vision, and her mastery of using all 4 teammates to generate openings. That's what separates her as the top point guard in the game. In a 3-player setup, all of that gets squeezed. The floor shrinks, possessions speed up, and the margin for decision-making becomes razor-thin. What works in 3-on-3 isn't the same skill set that dominates full-court basketball. The players who flourish in Unrivaled tend to be pure creators, isolation specialists, the kind of guards who can beat defenders one-on-one in tight spaces, like a Chelsea Gray operating in a phone booth. Clark could survive the way Sabrina does at times, pulling up from deep, splashing a few logo shots, then enduring some rough shooting stretches. But that's not who she is at her core. It doesn't highlight what makes her exceptional. Spending months in a system that minimizes your strengths isn't just questionable from a basketball standpoint. It's a poor business decision, too.
I mean it. Like, I think the odds of her just rocking up to Unrivaled and hanging out for a day or two in Miami with Kate, with Lexi, with Aaliyah, like, I think the odds of that happening are, I'm not going to say high, but maybe relatively high. The odds of her pulling a Sabrina, and Sabrina being like, I wanted to play in a rival, but I got injured. I got injured during the WNBA season. It was like, no, like, they literally were trying to, I'm pretty sure Unrivaled made it public that they were trying to negotiate a contract with her.
Here's where the Sabrina situation actually becomes the warning sign everyone keeps glossing over. When Unrivaled publicly announced they were negotiating with Sabrina Ionescu, that was intentional. They wanted the optics. They wanted the credibility of attaching one of the most recognizable guards in the league to their product. And for a moment, it looked real. Talks were happening. The league made sure people knew it. Then suddenly, the story changed. Sabrina announced she couldn't participate because she was dealing with an injury coming out of the WNBA season. Now, let's be clear about something up front. The injury itself was real. No one serious is disputing that. But the uncomfortable question is whether the injury was the reason she didn't play, or the permission structure that allowed her to step away without backlash. Because when you zoom out and look at Sabrina's timeline, the calculus becomes obvious. That WNBA season was not a success by her standards. When Breanna Stewart went down, the Liberty completely collapsed. They lost roughly a dozen games in a brutal stretch. Jonquel Jones missed time. Betnijah Laney Hamilton was away for Eurobasket. The roster was unstable, the offense sputtered, and Sabrina's efficiency took a hit. For the first time in a while, the narrative around her shifted from engine of a contender to struggling to carry a broken roster. She didn't make all WNBA first team. For a player of Sabrina's stature, that's a disappointment. Not a disaster, but a signal. Now ask the question no one in league media wants to ask out loud: did playing year-round help her, or did it hurt her? Because Sabrina had just come off heavy workloads, international play, constant minutes, constant responsibility. And then she entered a WNBA season where the margin for error was thin and her legs weren't fresh. That matters a lot. Elite players don't just think about the next check. They think about narrative, longevity, and legacy. Sabrina is already an established brand. She doesn't need Unrivaled. What she needs is to protect her prime, and Caitlin Clark is watching all of this very closely. Clark isn't just a shooter. She's a walking business ecosystem. Every WNBA game she plays impacts ratings, ticket sales, league perception, endorsement leverage, and future CBA negotiations. One down year, one inefficient season, one visible fatigue slump, and the critics come out in force. She knows that. Her camp knows that. Nike definitely knows that. So when Clark looks at Sabrina's situation, the lesson isn't 3-on-3 is fun or off-season reps help. The lesson is overexposure is dangerous. Sabrina already had her contracts, already had her signature shoe, already had her place. Clark is still defining the peak of her value curve. For her, the risk-reward equation is completely different. Playing Unrivaled doesn't elevate her brand. It doesn't showcase her best basketball. It doesn't protect her body. And if it leads to diminished performance in the WNBA season that actually defines her legacy, that's catastrophic from a business standpoint. So yes, Sabrina's injury was real, but the decision that followed was strategic, and Caitlin Clark is smart enough to learn from someone else's wear and tear instead of discovering it the hard way herself.
It was in a couple of games, and then when Stewie went down, it was just a disaster. Because Jonquel and Emma did not, there could not have been a worse on-the-court fit than Jonquel Jones and Emma Messman together. But yeah, it was an interesting one there. But maybe she could pull a Sabrina. Maybe she could pull a Sabrina, and in the end, that might, if she pulled a Sabrina and just showed up, not even played, and just showed up to do commentary, that might be something that they'd be happy with. But at the end of the day, look, I don't see Unrivaled lasting more than 4 years. The only chance I think Unrivaled lasting more than 4 years is if they pair with the WNBA. I just don't see this league lasting. Why don't I see this league lasting? Because straight up, it is horrendous basketball. It is
They dropped a few games early, but once Stewie got hurt, everything completely unraveled. Because the on-court chemistry just wasn't there, and the pairing of Jonquel Jones with Emma was about as bad a fit as you could possibly imagine. From a basketball standpoint, it became a mess fast. That's why I keep thinking maybe she could pull a Sabrina move, where she technically shows up, doesn't actually play, and maybe just does commentary or appearances, which Unrivaled would probably accept just to say she's involved. But realistically, I don't see Unrivaled surviving long-term. I honestly don't think it lasts beyond 4 years unless it somehow formally aligns itself with the WNBA. I just don't see a sustainable future there, and the reason is simple. The product itself is rough. Strip away the branding and hype, and what's left is really bad basketball, plain and simple.
This is a really interesting scenario, and if anyone could convince Caitlin Clark to go and play in Unrivaled, it's probably Kate Martin, but I don't think that would happen. It would take, I don't even know, they would give her I don't even think she'd do it for a massive ownership stake in the league, because let's be real, she probably has people in her ear being like, this is bullshit, it's going to fail anyway, so this ownership stake is worthless, which, fair enough. But anyway.
Yes, Unrivaled would take that deal in a heartbeat. No hesitation. If Caitlin Clark agreed to not play a single possession but showed up courtside, did a little commentary, sat next to Kate Martin, Lexi Hull, and Aaliyah Boston for a Miami weekend, the league would treat it like a victory parade. Because at this stage, Unrivaled isn't selling wins, standings, or even basketball quality. They're selling access. Access to players in street clothes, access to vibes, access to see them differently. And that's why your point about the basketball itself matters so much. When you strip away the lighting, the camera angles, the music, and the branding, what you're left with is exactly what you said, an exhibition product. Not a league in the traditional sense. You nailed the competitive divide. A handful of players genuinely care: Skylar Diggins-Smith, Chelsea Gray, the Lunar Owls last season, Rose BC, pre-injury Angel Reese, Kelsey Mitchell. When those players are on the floor, you can feel the difference immediately. The pace changes. The physicality changes. The decision-making sharpens. But most nights? Most roster sits a paid vacation with a basketball attached. That's the fatal flaw. A real league cannot depend on whether individual players feel like competing that night. Competitive integrity can't be optional. When effort is inconsistent, fans subconsciously clock it within minutes, even if they can't articulate why the game feels off. That's why Clark pulling a Sabrina actually makes perfect sense for her, and why it's still useless for Unrivaled's long-term health. But it doesn't fix the core issue. The product doesn't reward seriousness. It rewards presence. And that's why your distinction between league versus event is so important. Events can survive on vibes. Leagues can't. Leagues need stakes, urgency, consequences. Unrivaled has none of those unless specific players decide to impose them themselves. Which brings us back to Caitlin Clark. She understands, probably better than anyone, that her value comes from meaningful competition, not visibility alone. 5-on-5, full court, real stakes. That's where her IQ, gravity, and influence actually show up. Oh yes, Unrivaled would absolutely take her sitting courtside with a mic and a smile. But that alone tells you everything you need to know about where the league really is, and that's not how sustainable basketball leagues are built. At the core of everything, Kate Martin's beach remark raises a bigger issue that can't be ignored. What exactly is Unrivaled truly giving these athletes? When the main pitch to two of the top players on the planet revolves around relaxing by the ocean on rest days, it sends a clear signal that the on-court product isn't the primary attraction. The basketball itself isn't being positioned as the centerpiece. The level of competition isn't the hook. The chance to sharpen skills against the best isn't the focus. Instead, it's being packaged as a lifestyle experience that happens to involve basketball, and while there's nothing wrong with that on its own, that's not how Unrivaled presents itself publicly. To the audience, it's marketed as a groundbreaking league poised to reshape women's basketball, promising elite 3-on-3 competition and claiming to represent the sport's future. Yet behind the scenes, the message to players leans heavily on warm weather, leisure, and off-day perks. That gap matters because when a league relies on star names to attract viewers, but those stars aren't genuinely interested in the style of play, the foundation becomes unstable. That's not how you create something lasting. It's how you build something fragile, vulnerable to collapse if a single major variable changes. One labor dispute that never materializes, one Caitlin Clark declining the invitation, and the whole structure wobbles. Could Kate Martin realistically persuade Caitlin to participate? Possibly, given their real bond formed at Iowa. If anyone could coax Clark into showing up in any capacity, even on the sidelines or behind a microphone, it would likely be Kate. But actually committing to compete would require Clark to reverse her long-standing views on 3-on-3 basketball, and nothing in her history suggests she prioritizes personal relationships over long-term professional planning. Every step she's taken has been deliberate, from navigating Olympic decisions to carefully structuring endorsement deals and protecting her off-season for targeted development instead of chasing quick appearances. She clearly understands that her peak earning window is finite and that every choice carries future consequences. Joining a league that doesn't highlight her strengths, increases injury risk, or interferes with WNBA preparation isn't an emotional call, it's a financial and career calculation. And when you examine it honestly, the argument for Caitlin Clark participating in Unrivaled simply isn't compelling. Even if she were offered a significant ownership share, it's hard to imagine her accepting, because an equity stake in a league with an uncertain lifespan doesn't hold much value. The entire operation hinges on ongoing investor confidence and consistent fan engagement, yet that engagement is almost entirely driven by which stars show up. If players are participating for checks instead of competition, audiences eventually pick up on it. Sports history is full of examples like this. Leagues built on name recognition without deep competitive substance tend to fade away. The Big Three had recognizable faces, former NBA talent, major financial backing, and strong promotion. Yet today it exists largely on the margins. Unrivaled may boast slicker presentation and more current stars, but the underlying issue remains identical. If the basketball itself lacks intensity and commitment, the initial excitement wears thin. 3-on-3 basketball, in particular, sits in an awkward space. It resembles traditional basketball, but it isn't the same game. The tactics, physical demands, rhythm, and skill translation differ significantly. For athletes who've dedicated their lives to mastering 5-on-5 play, being asked to excel in a fundamentally different format for entertainment value alone is a tall order. While some adjust smoothly, many don't, and nearly all would choose traditional basketball if given the option. That's why Kate Martin's comment may be the most truthful moment in Unrivaled's entire promotional cycle. By highlighting the beach in downtime, she inadvertently revealed what the league really is: a well-compensated chance to play basketball in an attractive location with favorable weather and low pressure. It's not a transformative competitive platform. It's not redefining the women's game. It's an enjoyable opportunity, and for players like Martin, who understand their realistic WNBA trajectory and know they're unlikely to become perennial all-stars or championship cornerstones. That's a perfectly sensible way to spend the offseason. But for Caitlin Clark, someone already earning more through endorsements than most players make in salaries, someone driven by ambitions of MVPs and championships, relaxation alone isn't persuasive. The money isn't enough. The opportunity has to genuinely enhance her growth in the version of basketball she values most, and polished 3-on-3 games in Miami simply don't accomplish that. So the real issue isn't whether Kate Martin can recruit Caitlin Clark, it's whether Unrivaled can endure without her. Right now, much of the league's messaging seems fixated on eventually securing Clark's involvement, from expanded rosters to constant speculation and interviews that repeatedly circle back to her name. That approach isn't viable long-term. You can't construct a league around a player who has no desire to be part of it. And even if a WNBA season were canceled due to labor negotiations, Clark would still have numerous alternatives beyond Unrivaled. She could compete overseas in a traditional 5-on-5 environment, dedicate time exclusively to training, organize exhibition tours, or work with USA Basketball on national team preparation. Assuming a canceled season automatically funnels her into Unrivaled ignores the reality that she has options, many of them better aligned with her goals. Ultimately, Kate Martin made her case, and she did so honestly, even if it wasn't what investors or executives hoped to hear. Sunny beaches, winter warmth, and low-stakes basketball with friends do have appeal, but they don't appeal to everyone, especially not to someone aiming to become the greatest player the WNBA has ever seen. Sometimes the simplest answer tells you everything you need to know, and in this case, that answer was the beach.